Hi, everybody. I'm EB. I am an out boss.
Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. On today's show, I am thrilled to be introducing you to EB Sanders. So, EB, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rhodes.
Yes. So if you are not familiar with EB's work, she is a certified career coach and creator of the Career Change with Confidence system. She helps folks just like you think bigger about what they want to show up in the world doing, moving from wondering what now to declaring with confidence, let's do this. EB's specialty is working with creative types and helping them find their thing. EB wants you to be happy in life and career. And in her words, happy like belting out Beyonce into your organic loofah in the shower on Monday mornings, happy. I love that. So EB, I love this. I love what you do. So let's just jump into the thing. So I have to say that you have an amazing website. I love the design. So one, I just encourage people to check that out once we're done with the conversation. So nicely done on that. And on that, you share a little bit about your origin story. So I would love for you to help our audience get a better sense about why you decided to get started as a certified career coach.
Yeah. So I think like many of us, a little bit of a long and winding career history, but I knew really early on for me what I wanted to do. I knew what my dream job was, and that was I wanted to be a professor at the college level, and I wanted to teach art history and humanities. And I worked my butt off, and I was able to get that job. It was not easy. It was, again, a long and winding road, but I loved it. And I got to teach courses like the history of creativity. And I got to introduce, 17-year-old students to Robert Mapplethorpe. So those were fun days. And I had so much fun in that job, and it fulfilled me on so many levels. Unfortunately, it didn't fulfill the bank account. And I was really struggling. I live in San Francisco, right? We all know it's one of the most expensive cities in the nation. And I was working more than full time. I was teaching over a full load, and I was still having to make the decision of, okay, do I have internet at home, or, can I buy coffee? I had to make these decisions on a daily basis. And California educational system being what it is, I finally got to the point where I had to make the decision of moving away from my hometown to continue doing what I loved with all of my heart and soul. But that would mean moving away from my family, or I had to make a switch. And so I really felt like the option wasn't really up to me. I felt like I just had to make the choice, the only one that was available, which I felt was such a non-choice. And I truly went through a huge grieving process of feeling like I'd lost, the love of my life, this job that I'd worked so hard for and that I loved so much. And I then struggled for the next couple of years. I took a lot of jobs. I framed the whole thing in sort of terms of a bad divorce. Like I went through a lot of rebounds. I went through a lot of jobs that I knew I wasn't going to like, because I didn't want to be good at them, because I didn't want to do them, because I couldn't do the thing I wanted to do. But when I finally had that big talk with myself, it's like, girl, you got to move on. You got to find your thing. I then, I went into recruiting and staffing and working in the creative world and helping people, especially female creatives, really hone their skills and do what they wanted to do and find fulfillment in their careers. And I really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't that first love kind of hearts and flowers that my first career was, but I still got so much out of it. But even, that's such a career that I enjoyed so much. It had its shortcomings in that when I really wanted to help people and I wanted to tell them like, hey, if you want to be more fulfilled in your career, you're going to have to leave where we're working. I couldn't tell them that because I was under the constraints of a corporate job, and I couldn't tell them things that weren't great for the company. So that's how I founded my coaching practice. I went on my own so that I could help the people that I wanted to help. I could help them so fully. I wasn't, tied down by anybody else's paycheck attached to my name. So at the time, it seemed to me so disparate. It seemed that it had nothing to do with teaching, had nothing to do with my academic career. But as I've gone through coaching more and more and more, I look back and I realize there's a giant red string tying all of this stuff together. Whether it was a 18-year-old sitting in my creativity class, or if it's a 45-year-old woman trying to figure out who she is and what she wants, I've always been someone who's trying to help people figure out what they want to do with their lives, who they want to be, how they want to show up. And so that's something that once that clicked, everything clicked. I realized that no matter what my title is, who I am and what I do has always been the same. So that's been really kind of a great realization for me to come to.
Isn't it amazing when you look back in hindsight, it all makes sense, yet when you're in it, especially at those really pivotal moments when you're about to make a switch, that it almost feel uncertain about what is next.
Yeah.
I've definitely been there, especially before I started being an entrepreneur, at least, less entrepreneurial inside of an organization and really owning, I'm a business owner, and that's really scary. So, you were, super generous, right? In sharing just like what that process looked like for you. So I'm not an academic, but I can only imagine I have a lot of friends who have taken a similar route of working in the academy, doing their craft, doing the thing that they are experts in, masters in for a long, long time. And then making that difficult choice of saying, you know what, even though I love teaching, I love doing the research, I still feel like there's so much more I can do. And this place that I'm in is limiting me in that. And so, taking that leap and then having to share with colleagues who, are in the academy, like I'm doing this thing that feels really risky. How did you reintroduce yourself? Because you are a career shift guru. You help other people with that. So how do you help people reintroduce by maybe sharing a little bit about your own journey if you do that?
Yeah. I mean, it was so difficult for me because who I was so tied into my identity of being an academic, of being a professor. And it was something I was so proud of. And I felt had, looking back, a little bit of that cachet. Didn't have the money, but it definitely has a little bit of respect attached to it, sort of just automatically. And it was so difficult for me to let go of that. And so when I see my clients really struggling with, okay, but I'm this thing now and I've never been anything else, and I don't know how to be anything else, really working with them on their mindset of who they are as a person, not their job title. And, it sounds really surface, but it's not. It goes so deep. And once they understand who they are at their core, what they find most valuable in life, what their genuine priorities are, the title of that becomes so less consequential, so less important, because they start standing in the confidence of knowing who they are as a human being, and they don't need the title as much. One question I love asking them is, okay, if you got to do all of these role responsibilities that you loved and you were so fulfilled and you found all the meaning in your work, would you care if your title was janitor? And they always get to the point where they're like, no, I don't. Do I get to do the thing I want? Cool. I don't care. But it takes a lot of work to get them from the point of I am a graphic designer to no, I don't care what you call me. I get to do the work I want to do. It's a long road, but it's all about the internal work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? You put in such hard work of earning, and I know for folks, especially like when you reach tenure, right? Like you've done the thing, you've reached this crowning achievement, and then you realize like, oh, maybe this isn't what I wanted. And to be honest with yourself just in that moment, that could really be a crisis of confidence in some ways, because it's like, I always was this thing. And so much of myself, especially in the United States, being cultured where like work as an adult is what defines you. And it's so much more than that. And yet like we still can bring more of ourselves into the work that we can do if we can find like the right work that lights us up. And so kind of like letting go of those titles and letting go of being attached to an institution, that's all really, really important reminders, and a good reason to have a career coach to help you with like processing it all, right? So I mentioned your website, which I think is awesome. It's amazing. And so we have a lot of folks who are coaches, consultants, they're authors, et cetera, who, they're in the business of that personal branding. And I'm sure you work with a number of creatives that, like their business is them. So what advice would you have for any of our listeners just to more clearly communicate how we can help our clients using the website? And because I think you do this really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, please, people check out the website.
That brings me such joy, because this website, which is now oh gosh, it's like 4 or 5 years old
Oh,
at this
wow.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is still the website that I built while I was working my corporate job. I built this myself in a little conference room, being like, I've got a meeting, and hiding back there and putting this thing together. Yeah, this is still that site. And I think like many people, when they start, their entrepreneurial journey, it's like, oh, I need a business card and I need a logo and I need these things, without realizing that you don't need any of those things. And B, the website, though, it is a tool, and you need to view it so much more than, just something pretty to look at. It's absolutely a tool for you to do your work. And so I think that's why my website has sort of lived. I think because I was in the advertising world and in the creative world, that was something I understood very early on. I knew I needed it to reflect exactly who I was as a person. And if you talk with me for, more than a few minutes, I'm an expert. I'm very professional. My demeanor is not stuffy. I don't also pretend to be a guru, even if I, have been doing something longer than someone else. Someone's, insight is always going to be as valuable as mine. I view myself as someone who's just contributing to the conversation. So I didn't feel that my website had to be the end all be all. I felt that it was really just a place to showcase who I was, how I work, and how people could just talk to me, because I love just talking to people. So that was the main focus of it. So I haven't spent a bunch of money on it. I haven't spent a bunch of time tweaking it and doing all of the little, mechanics on it. And maybe that's to my detriment, but I started out very, very early on, not focusing on my brand, but just who I was at my core of a person. And as an entrepreneur, if you are solo, and if that is how you're building your business, creating a website that is basically a digital version of you is going to serve you so well, instead of really focusing on, well, what are other people going to respond to? Well, what would you respond to, right? How are you, because people want to know who they're going to work with. My clients know absolutely when they get on the phone with me, they're like, oh my gosh, you're your website in person form. Yes. They say it all the time.
Yeah.
So if you can do that for yourself, it can serve you so well. And it is important to have it. But that said, I know very successful entrepreneurs who don't have websites, which boggles my mind. I find that amazing and fascinating. But I know for me, I wanted a tool that could be out there in the world and act as me and my voice out there, and really, represented who I was. So for me, yeah, this was a little labor of love very early on, but I've tried not to, fix what isn't broken.
Thank you for that. I think one of the takeaways I had from all that you shared there is thinking about the type of feeling that you want to communicate to people you can help. And, one of the things that I picked up on is like, wow, EB really gets, I felt like you got me, I was like, I can totally relate to her. And when you want that in someone who's going to coach you on something that is, you have to be pretty vulnerable to name, I'm ready for a change, like the 45-year-old woman that you were working with, of like, I don't know who I am or what I want in my work, in my life.
Yeah.
That's a scary place to be, right?
It's an incredibly scary place to be. And to do successful coaching, to be successful in the work that I do, I have to create a space where people feel comfortable being vulnerable with me. And I think part of that comes from me being vulnerable on my website. Like, I don't pull a lot of punches. I'm very honest about kind of the journey I've gone through. There's, you can read about my entire story on my website. But I have a lot of people who cry during consult calls, not even like coaching sessions. And it comes from, they say, I felt like you might understand where I'm coming from. And they always apologize. And and it's something I go through so often, because people feel so unheard in the corporate environment most of the time. And to just have someone listen to them and listen to their frustrations and genuinely understand their point of view, unfortunately, is rare for them. And so I love that I've created a space where they feel comfortable enough to do that. It was kind of a joke at my last corporate job, where I was a bit of a therapy couch, because I worked with all creatives, and they would come to my office and I was given a nice couch and a box of Kleenex, which nobody else's office had, because there were a lot of tears. And, because our identities are so wrapped up in our work, especially creative work. And I think every entrepreneur is a creative person, because you have to be, right? The space to be vulnerable is so key. And yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's necessary. And coaching is all about having that open space.
Yes. So your specialties, one of them is working with the creatives and finding their thing, as you say. Mm-hmm. So what's one thing that most creative folks don't know about their career options, but ought to?
They don't think they have options. It's really interesting. And my work is really kind of a 3-phase process where we spend the first chunk of time together working on who you are as a person. And then we move into like, okay, now that we know who you are, let's go nuts with it. Let's get weird and wild and let's look at all of your options. Yeah. And I'd say 80% of clients that come to me new say, I don't have any options. I'm stuck, but there's really nothing else I can do because I've only ever done this one thing. I'm stuck. And I liken it to, it's like going trick or treating where we're just filling that sack full of all of the candies. We're putting it all in there. And we'll worry about finding those like full bars of chocolate at the bottom later, but it's about just looking at your options. And I love watching them just put down every single crazy, wild idea that's ever come into their head and them standing back and looking at it. And they come back and say, I'm so overwhelmed because I have so many options.
Yeah.
I love that. It terrifies them. I love it because we're told not to dream big. And someone's idea of a big dream is totally different from someone else's. Like one of my favorite clients, he was actually very high level in a very demanding job. He decided he just wanted to work with his hands. He wanted to he wanted some instant gratification. He's like, I just want to help people pick out bathroom tile. That's his big dream. And he's now doing that. And he has an amazingly successful business and he's never been happier. And he's got more time to be with his family and do the things he wants to do. So the big dream, I think people get stuck on this idea of, living your passion or finding your dream. It has to be this big thing that other people will recognize as a big dream, as an option out there that, something that totally makes sense. I spend a lot of time talking to people and attempting to get them to understand that you have to define success for yourself first. And once you know what your definition of success is, the options just open wide for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I almost feel like with what you're doing right now, the dreaming big, allowing your clients to kind of map out where they are, what lights them up. There's so many ways to give your skills, your gifts to the world and using the internet and using these new tools to start businesses that even 20 years ago weren't readily available to us. So the barrier to entry has decreased tremendously, I think, at least kind of in the practicalities of like, how do I start a business? Or, like I feel like it's easier than ever. And yet it still feels overwhelming to get past that. I don't know what's at the end of this cliff. Like I'm going to take this leap and I don't know if I'm going to make it across the divide or if I'm going to fall completely. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's definitely what holds folks back. And so one thing I'm curious about is for yourself and everything that you know about career shift now, because you work with so many folks on this, what might be one thing that you wished you knew about shifting careers?
This is really, I'm loving that you asked this question because I very literally wrote out this list last night, not planning on speaking to it about this, but sending it out to my email list. Yeah. I wrote a list of like the top 4 things I wish I had known and that I would totally do differently if I was starting over in my career shift now. Oh, I love that you asked this question.
Yes. You get a sneak peek.
You totally do. So the number one absolute first thing that I say to anyone contemplating either starting their own business or switching careers is that you have to know who you are. You have to dig deep and really be honest with yourself and really understand what your values and priorities are. And then you need to lean into that. You have to lean into your you-ness. That is where the gooey, amazing center is going to be. That's where you're going to be the most successful. And unfortunately, so many people hold off on that. They pull back from being the most them because they're trying to be palatable to the most amount of people. They try to smooth out those rough edges. But I truly believe if you smooth out those rough edges, there's nowhere for people to grab onto. And if you are your most you are going to make the most impact on the people that resonate with you. And there are so many people in the world. There's more than enough people out there who want to resonate with just a particular type of person. So definitely number one, I would have trusted who I was as a person more. And I would have understood who I was as a person more. I would have attempted to make myself less beige. Unfortunately, the best word that I can use there. So you definitely trust your, who you are as a human being and lean into your you-ness. And then the flip side of that is trusting your gut. So many people, like you said, it's that concept of the cliff of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can make it over this. And there's so much going on when you're trying to make one of these changes. There's so many nerves happening. There's so many what if questions floating around in your head. that you stop trusting your gut because you have sort of a bit of a nauseous feeling all of the time. And you feel so unsure that you're just like, okay, it's fine. You don't know what you're talking about. I can tell, trust your gut. No matter what's going on in your head, your gut knows what's good for you. I would have trusted my gut. There's so many things that, I listened to what other people said instead of trusting my gut. And it was absolutely the wrong path in my entrepreneurial journey for sure. As soon as, I kind of came to myself and said, no, I know what's good for me. I know what feels good in my body. Because when you've got that energy that something feels right for you, and your energy that you put out in the world is so much different than if it makes you feel gross, if it makes you feel a little sick, like it's not right. And you show up differently in the world that way. So I've trusted my gut. Everyone needs to trust their gut at all times. That's a big one for me. I would caution people against trying to fix their flaws. Instead, play to their strengths. If you're really good at talking in front of people, great. Do more of that. Become the best at the things you're already good at. Don't spend time trying to putty up the cracks. You can always outsource the things that you're not good at. Always.
Yes. Highly recommend that.
Right? Lean into your strengths, work within your strengths, do the things that you're just genuine. Let it be fun and let it be easy. I think, especially in America, right? We're told that if it's easy, it can't be right. Like you shouldn't be making money doing something that's just super easy for you because somehow that's wrong. I don't understand why that's a thing at all. I think if you can just work in your strengths and the things that make you feel good and are easy and fun and you enjoy them, great. If you're helping people doing that, amazing. If you're making money doing that, phenomenal. Instead of wasting time learning, Excel when you're terrible at, order and numbers. Why waste the time? And then I think the last thing is kind of something we touched on before, but I think is key to everything, is starting by defining success for yourself. So many people go into business or change careers because they're like, oh, well, I want to be making six figures. I want to be a millionaire. I want to do, they attach these numbers that are just sort of floating out there in the entrepreneurial ether without understanding if that's even A, what they really want, and B, if they acquired it, what would that mean? What if that money isn't the thing for them? What if it is just about, I work a couple hours a week, all my bills are paid, I'm comfortable, and my family gets to see my face,
Yes.
It's about truly defining what that is for you. But it can be, my wife's version of success is very different than mine. She loves working. She would happily work until 4 a.m. if I let her. Whereas my version of success is working as little as possible and making the biggest impact as possible. And then spending time with my dogs, going on a hike, doing all the things.
Yeah.
So you need to know what that is for yourself. You have to.
I love these. I love these kind of lessons that you now know. That's like, if you could only rewind and go back.
But
EB.
right, just yelling into the void.
Yeah.
But I am very much one of those people that believes I don't regret my path here because I would not be the person I am today. I would not be the entrepreneur I am today if I hadn't done things the way I did them. Even if I now consider them to be not the best way, not the right way, I always have learned something along the way. So I really try to look back, and yes, I could have, there were shortcuts. There were lots of, nights of heartache. I could have just knocked off the clock if I had known these things now, but I don't think I could have come to know them if I hadn't gone through that.
So true, right? That's the human experience. We have to do it. I mean, we can people tell us oh no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like you're even more curious to do the thing that you're not doing.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet, if there was some way we could record conversations that we were told all the time, that someone along the way told me most of these. I'm willing to bet that that's a fact.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
but
definitely.
Until you're ready to hear it and ready to understand it, it doesn't stick in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is all really helpful. And thank you for sharing a lot of background about your business and what you do and how you arrived there. So I would love to shift into our rainbow part of the program. You are an LGBTQ business owner now. So I'm wondering, maybe not so much in running the business that you have today, but reflecting on times that as an LGBT person working for someone else, there was a time where you felt that you were underestimated, undervalued. Maybe perhaps you experienced a microaggression or outright discrimination because of being out or sharing more aspects of being LGBTQ in the office. So if you can relate to that question, if you're like, oh yeah, this time, just share a little bit about that and how you worked around it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So this is bringing up things I didn't expect. Yeah. So very early on in my career, I was living in New York, was doing the whole kind of New York in your 20s thing, and absolutely loving it. And I was working a job that I knew wasn't my end all be all job, but I have a great work ethic. I wanted to be really good at my job. And I was, until all of a sudden I wasn't, and I couldn't figure it out because I hadn't changed my behaviors. Everything I was doing was the same, but all of a sudden I was being pulled into meetings. I was being told that I was underperforming. Things miraculously were getting messed up with my work. It turns out that my boss had found out that I was gay and was basically trying to find a way to fire me. She just simply could not deal with having me around. So I was finally just let go for quote unquote underperforming, and then was told by other employees who I was still friendly with because they didn't understand what was happening either. She had told them basically afterwards that it was because she just couldn't have a gay person around because that was just not in her belief system, as much like Santa Claus. So that's in a strange way, I feel lucky to have had that experience early on in a corporate setting, because I had definitely experienced discrimination out and about on the street. Definitely had some violent acts perpetrated against me for just being out in public. So to have it in the corporate world where you kind of have the assumption, well, there's rules and there's regulations and we're professional humans and we're going to just treat everybody with respect. And coming to the realization at a young enough age where that is not the case. And then moving forward with that, I then made it known very early on, any positions I took next, not that I'd ever attempted to hide that I was out or gay prior, but I never brought it up because because it was such a non-issue for me. It was me and it was my life, but I made sure to bring it up very early on within my first week of employment to be like, I am gay. Here is my, the name of my girlfriend, or here is what I'm doing. Here are the gay charities I'm supporting at the moment. Being very, very clear of, this is who I am. Let's work this out right now if this is going to be a problem for you. And that sort of formed how I showed up. Mm-hmm. And I sort of at that point didn't allow it to be questioned. I didn't allow it to be a question. I never apologized for it. I didn't really allow it to be a topic of discussion. It was very much just, this is how it is, and this is who I am, and this is how we're going to deal with it. Not to say that there weren't still issues, because of course there were, because of course working in the corporate world, I worked with a lot of middle-aged conservative white men who didn't know where and how to place me, especially since I present very traditionally feminine. And so there were a lot of times where they would have conversations with me that I didn't find appropriate because they were trying to bond, or they were trying to find a way to work with it. They just genuinely didn't know how to place me. And so I found a lot of the onus was on me to direct conversations to, I don't want to say behavior correct, but unfortunately sometimes that was the truth. And I didn't always feel that it was, quote unquote, fair for me to be the one that had to lead that. Yeah. But this was very much prior to, kind of all of our diversity and inclusion work that's occurring right now. Mm-hmm. At best, I was working somewhere that had a sexual harassment training. And even then I was working places sometimes didn't. So the onus was on me. And I think luckily now that's changing to where people aren't expected to be the ones to accept the aggression and the responsibility for fixing it.
Yeah.
And so I would work that sort of into kind of every new position I took on. I would try and find a way, but it's out of your control. There's always things, and it's a lot of the times that not even microaggressions, the actual aggressions, they were not intentional. It's not like I worked for horrible people, but a lot of people, it just doesn't even occur to them that they may be offending you, they may be excluding you, they may, just not even being considering you in that sort of way. It's difficult, but I found that for me, the best way that I got through things, the best way I could handle it was just really understanding who I am, what was important to me, and how, most of what I did was completely normalize my behavior and act as if, because it was to me, just every day, just totally normal. And, there's still very hurtful moments at times from people you don't expect. Mm-hmm. I would really try to give the benefit of the doubt. And while, yes, they may have offended me, I gotta hope that it was not intentional. They're not a malicious human being. So I would really try to have some empathy before I would go into a conversation. And I always made sure to have the conversation.
Yeah, it's a powerful and unfortunate learning lesson early on, New York in your 20s, getting a job, doing good work, and then basically being forced out because of kind of these fake metrics around performance and how was that defined? And I think it's a really important learning journey or lesson to share with our audience, right? Because that's New York City, right? And so it's this, regardless of what time it happened, the perception is, it's a very progressive place and everyone's welcomed and we embrace all of our differences. And the reality is like, even in New York, and I would say even now, there's great policies, now the Supreme Court has made it very clear that LGBTQ people are protected when it comes to our sexual orientations and gender identities. And still there's a way to go. And that learning lesson for you is like, you left there. That was a bad fit for a variety of reasons. And because you feel safe enough, there's a lot of factors that allow you to lead with, I'm a member of the LGBT community and that's really important to me. And I donate to X, Y, and Z organizations and people know where you are. And so I think it's one of those pieces around coming out, which we have to do all the time, because we're just assumed to be straight or cisgender and that can be annoying. Right. And at the same time, no matter how many times we do it, sometimes when we're in the company of people who aren't within the rainbow family, we're like implicitly out. And sometimes we forget like, oh, we're not publicly out. Like, it's not like we're Ellen DeGeneres where people just know. So it can be kind of shocking that when we lead with it, it's still, people still aren't quite there and embracing all of us. And so I thank you for sharing that. It's a good reminder, even when we do this. I mean, with this show alone, it's called The Out Entrepreneur. I can't tell you how many times entrepreneurs say, hey, I want to be on your show. And I'm like, great. There's 2 requirements. You have to own a business and you have to be LGBTQ. And they're like, oh, well, we're not gay. And it's just like, okay, well, did you take a look at the show? So anyway, so even when I think this is as publicly out as it is, it's still, people just make assumptions, right? So anyway. I really thank you for that. Not easy to go back into kind of memory lane when it's harder memories, right? On the flip, we like to embrace like the things that make us powerful. So I'm wondering from your perspective, your lived experiences of being a part of our rainbow family, what do you see as kind of our superpowers or your superpowers that allow you to stand out in your business because you are a member of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah. Oh, I think this is going to sound double-edged, but I think it's the truth. It's our strength coming from our collective trauma. And I just don't think that anyone in any part of the rainbow, any letter that we want to attach them, has gotten to where they are as an adult today, even in 2020, without some trauma of coming to terms with your own identity and how you come out to your family, how you come out, in the world, in the workplace, how you navigate those decisions. Like you said, it's getting better. And I think, the trauma is lessening, but I think as we both know, worldwide, still a big conversation, right? So I think the considerations we have to make before we do some fairly daily things versus someone who isn't has collectively made us such a strong, not that we're a monolith, but has made us a strong community because of our differences, but because of this collective trauma. Very literally, nothing that we cannot do because we've just had to do most things by ourselves in our own way. And I think what makes you a successful entrepreneur is doing things your own way, not following the rules, not following, the grid that somebody put down 100 years ago. And of course, that somebody was going to be a straight white cis-hetero, male, right? So yeah, I think my superpower, our collective superpower, is knowing that we are just out there, that we can lean on each other, that there is this community we can tap into, that there are other people who have shared experiences as wildly different as they may be, that we can support each other. And I think that's what just makes us so strong and so unique, which sounds crazy because there's so many of us, but you know what I mean? Because we are still considered outside, we're still considered a minority, a not norm, the not default. And I think we've done a great job of taking that as a good thing. Of saying, cool, I'm super glad to not be in that system. Let's create our own.
Totally.
And and I love that about us and about kind of, I've allowed that to form how I operate.
Yeah, it's powerful. It reminds me, my background when I was in school, going through a gender studies program, of thinking about queer studies and how some academics respond to it as this is a discipline that refuses to be disciplined. And it's like, that's an extension of us, right? Like, sure, you can't put us in a box, right? Because we're a both and, we complicate things. We talk about the beauty of being human and that we're all of the things, right? And you can't separate, aspects of our identities. And I think that's really important. And, when you're thinking about this collective trauma and how we respond to it, the resiliency is the resourcefulness that comes from that experience, almost positions us, if we do have that fire in our belly to do our own thing, we already have like so many of the traits of what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And that belief, that clarity in ourselves of who we are, even when everyone else in the world is saying, no, you're not this, it's like, no, this is who I am. And this is what I believe in. And this is what I'm doing in the world. And so anyway, I appreciate highlighting some of those superpowers that allow you to just do business differently and do it more authentically that feels right for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So winding down our time together, I have two more questions for you. The first is, thinking about this year, and we were kind of talking about 2020 before we got recording. What does this moment make possible that, so much change has happened, so many, the veil has been pulled down to reveal some of the nastiness of the world that we're in, specifically around anti-Blackness and systemic racism, dealing with pandemic, trying to find some joy in this quarantine life that we're in. So like when it comes to us and our businesses, like what's now possible that might not have been possible before entering 2020?
I think what's possible is that things are going to look different in the entrepreneurial world in terms of outcomes. Because I think everyone has done this collective reevaluation of what is actually important to them versus what they were taught to believe were success metrics, what they were taught to believe was important, what they were taught to believe they were meant to be working towards. We've had a lot of time to sit in our own stew and think about what we actually want and what we actually value and how we want to treat each other. So I think going forward, I think people's entrepreneurial journey is going to look much more personal. I think they're going to look very, very different. Just visually, I think the types of people that are going to get money are going to be changing. And I can't imagine a better outcome of all of this. I think that the money is going to start flowing in different directions. And I think when money flows in different directions, right, the power shift starts to occur. And I can't imagine a better outcome than people reevaluating, getting back to the true humanity of the thing and checking themselves and realizing where we've been culpable in hurting others and being forced to sit with that because we couldn't go distract ourselves by going to the bar on Friday, right?
Yeah.
We've had to have a collective reckoning. And I think because of that, people's journeys outwardly, I think what people expect in the corporate world is going to change. I feel that people are going to feel more comfortable advocating for themselves in a way that they may not have been earlier. So I think things are going to just look very different, just visually, energy-wise, power-wise, money-wise. And I think it's going to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I think the outcome of that on the other side is going to be phenomenal.
Yes. I love that. Thank you. I needed that. So okay. So less official question before we find out where we can find you online. Yes. And that question is thinking about those who tune into the show who haven't yet taken that leap to become an entrepreneur, but they're thinking about it. They're getting close.
Yes.
What advice do you have for them?
Oh, to play. My clients go through this a lot. A lot of people can be like, I don't know if I need a new corporate job or if I should start on my own, start a business. Being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. I think the idea is you get to do the thing you want to do all the time, but really when you become an entrepreneur, you're taking on 8 jobs. You are now doing all of the things, and the thing you left to go do that you enjoy, you actually do that the smallest amount for a good while when you first start. So people that are thinking about it, I say, create yourself a little sandbox. Give yourself a month or 2 months or 3 months to go play and keep it as a side thing for a while. And by play, I mean, experiment, test things out, try it out, ask a friend to act as a client, start creating, that product that you want to sell and just, Try and sell it to a few close people that you trust, but allow it to be easy. Don't go into it as I'm got to create a multi-million-dollar business next week. Go into it as what brings me joy and what is fun for me and what is easy and what do I know that will impact other people. And that definition of impact is different for everyone, but that's what business is about. It isn't just about dollars in your pocket, but the more fun you can have, the more experimenting you're willing to do, the more successful you're going to be. So I would suggest anyone that's on that cusp is just set a timeline and set it, for a short little kind of fun experiment. Because if you enjoy the experiment, you can then make some great decisions. If you hate the experimenting phase, you are not going to enjoy being an entrepreneur. And that's a great thing to know about yourself because it is not for everyone. So let yourself go, play, experiment, enjoy the process of doing the thing. Don't worry about signing up for a business class. Don't worry about figuring out all the online marketing tips and tricks. No. Go do the thing for a bit and have fun with it and then make decisions after a bit.
Yeah, that's really powerful advice. And I think it goes back to that kind of fourth thing that you shared earlier, lessons to your younger self is like getting that clarity of what success looks like for you. And also it kind of goes to, like you said too, knowing yourself of, what's the value add. The show also feels like it's for people with purpose-driven businesses. Like, how are you going to contribute to make a better world? And if it aligns with your values and who you are, and you have that fire in your belly to be an entrepreneur, I think that's like rocket fuel to take you to where you want to be so that you can reach the success that you've defined, right? Like,
absolutely. But I also caution, I don't want anyone that feels if they're not like, I'm not a purpose-driven person. I'm being selfish if I just want to start. No, if you want to start a company that like sells really fun and cute and tasty, like cupcake sprinkles, that will bring joy to my life. Like
exactly. Yes.
Your concept of impact and what other people want and what will make them happy and what will serve them in their life can be wildly different. It can be a funny t-shirt. It genuinely can. Yeah. But you need to go in it knowing who you are. I think that's the key. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. This is awesome. I really thank you, EB, for your time. And we've spent some time talking about your website. So where can we find you online?
Pretty easy to find me. I'm at ebsanders.com. And if you head on over there, it's fun to play around, but definitely right now in, December, January, I'm running some free no sales workshops because I'm getting other entrepreneurs together, things that we think we need, like how to set ourselves up for success in 2021. We're going to gather with other entrepreneurs and have fun and talk about how to set goals for ourselves and do the things. And I'm going to be doing a lot of those in the beginning of the new year. So come join me, click around on the website and have fun with it and find out all the resources that you could possibly need. And then, email me. My link's on there as well. I love hearing from people. So please do.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to check out the goal setting piece.
Oh,
If it's short, if you have a shorter one. Yeah.
I definitely do for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I think the time thing is, especially with Zoom, I'm just like, not another Zoom, but we need it. We definitely need it. Goal setting is really important. Well, thank you. And thank you for all of the outbosses who have tuned in today. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like EB. Details from today's conversation can be found over at outentrepreneur.com. And remember, new episodes of the show are available every Tuesday morning, wherever you consume podcasts. For now, keep showing up as authentically as you want at work and in life, and we'll talk next Tuesday. Thanks.